Hi everyone, welcome to Long Before Now, and today we're talking about the weapons and equipment used at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Okay, so the Battle of Hastings took place on the 14th of October 1066, and it's between the forces of Harold Godwinson, who's the newly crowned King of England, and Duke William of Normandy. Now, William has just sailed a fleet over from France and landed on the Sussex coast, and Harold is just marching down from Stamford Bridge, where he's just defeated a Viking army under Harold Hardrada. Now, as Harold marches down to the south, William starts to burn villages and cause trouble in the countryside, basically goading Harold to joining him in battle. Now, eventually that does work. Harold marches down to Sussex and they meet at Hastings at battle. Harold arrives first and takes position on Senlac Hill, in the standard Anglo-Saxon battle tactic, which is the shield wall, with lots of interlocking shields, men standing side by side, and basically creating an impenetrable wall on the top of the hill. Now, William arrives second. William has a more flexible army. He has heavy cavalry, some of the best in Europe at the time. He has archers, and he has a wide selection of infantry from different parts of Normandy and France at the time. Now, as the battle starts, basically what happens in a nutshell is the Normans wear down the English wall, tempting them out with feigned retreats. Sometimes the Saxons run down the hill, breaking the line, and are cut down by the Norman cavalry and the infantry. They're whittled away by the Norman arrows as well. Eventually that Saxon line breaks and the English are routed and chased down by the Norman cavalry. Harold also is famously killed, maybe with an arrow to the eye, no one's quite sure, but it's possibly, but he eventually dies at the battle anyway. And William goes on then to conquer the entire, the whole of England. Now we're going to look at some of the weapons and some of the equipment that they would have used at the Battle of Hastings. Let's talk about what I'm wearing now. I've got a simple woolen tunic on, long sleeved, keeps me warm. Underneath I've got my woolen hose, which are tied with ties that go all the way around my leg and tie up at the front. I've got leg wraps on, which keep my legs warm and dry. I've got simple leather boots on, which may have had hobnails on. I've got my sword or my sword belt, and this kind of denotes my rank, because not a lot of people would have been able to afford a sword, and this basically shows that I have a bit of money. So what would the warriors of 1066 have worn? Well, most would have just had a simple tunic if they couldn't afford much else, and they would have just had to make do. If you could afford a bit more, you may have purchased this, which is called a gambeson, and this is a padded jacket, and this is basically full of, they used a lot of horsehair to fill this out, and it basically takes any concussive blow from a mace or something like that, from an axe. They would have also worn on their head this, which is basically the same thing as a gambeson, but this goes on your head, and this is called an arming cap, just to take the impact out of a blow to the head. Now, moving on, if you could afford a lot more, you'd have maybe bought one of these. Now, this is a hauberk, or because it's got the shorter sleeves, this is called a haubergeon, and this is a mail shirt made up of thousands and thousands of links that are riveted together, and they have a single rivet, and that locks that link shut so it won't open and separate. Now, this is really good for stopping something like a sword or something with an edge, a blade, cutting across, and that will protect you from any kind of slashing attack. Stabbing attack, like with a spear or an arrow or a very sharp sword pointed to the point of the sword, would have penetrated one of these, so they weren't impregnable. You've also worn a coif, which is your head protection, stopping any slashes going to the throat or the neck. This one also has a leather face protector, and this would have gone across your face just to protect the mouth. Okay, so this is one of the types of helmet that would have been worn at the battle. This is the nasal helm, and it's quite popular in the 11th century. This is a one-piece construction and was regarded at the time to be a stronger and more reliable helmet. It gets its name from this nasal guard that would have gone all the way down the face, and most people that wore this would have worn chainmail underneath the helmet to protect the side of the face and the back of the head. But pretty good helmet, good visibility. Okay, this is the spangle helm. gets its name from these metal studs, strips going across each side, which reinforce the helmet, make it stronger. This also has a face plate, face guard, with these little holes which are called breaths. The visibility in this is still pretty good, but also that's its vulnerability. You've got quite big eye sockets, it's quite a big target to aim for. This should have been good for cavalrymen because it protects the lower face from any attacks coming upwards when you're on a horse. These would have been the two main types of shield at the Battle of Hastings. So we've got the round shield, mostly used by the Anglo-Saxons, and we've also got the kite shield, mostly used by the Normans, but both sides would have used both of these designs. Let's talk about the round shield first. Really old design, planks of wood with a leather or a rawhide facing on top, with a metal boss for my hand to fit in. This is a horizontal grip shield, so you can see that my hand, and my bad paint job with the shield, so my hand fits in there. This would have been used in the shield wall, so I would have had a man to my left, a man to my right, and we would have interlocked these shields to form a strong wall. And also, if I need to create space on the front, I can use this as a bit of a knuckle duster, and I can punch people back. I can make space for myself if I need to. I can drop it pretty quickly if I need to get something else. It's not too heavy, but a pretty simple design. It would have had a strap on the back as well if I needed to sling it over my back and carry it, but that's mostly what the Saxons would have carried. Now this is the kite shield. Now we don't really know when this was introduced into Europe, possibly from Spain, around that sort of area. It's a lot longer design, obviously. Bonus for this is for cavalrymen. If I'm carrying this, if I'm on a horse, this protects me shoulder down to almost my ankle. If I'm riding, also my legs a bit higher. It's got a rawhide trim around it, and this would have been either stitched through, or nailed on. This one's nailed on. On the back, you can see there's an arms, and basically my arm goes through these, so I've got my hand free, so I can use, if I'm on a horse, I can use the reins. It's also got a strap, goes across here, so if I need to, I can strap it over my shoulder, I can take my arm out, and I've got my hands free, I can sling it behind my back if I need to. These were also used by the infantry, and we see them in the Battle of Tapestry, and I think pretty good infantry shield. Obviously again, it still covers the whole of my body. I can almost hide what I'm doing behind here. I can move forward. I can still sort of use this as a weapon. But yeah, they're the basic main shields that would have been used at Hastings. Okay, one of the first weapons we're looking at is this, the mace. We see this in the Battle of Tapestry, and it's one of the weapons used by William the Conqueror. You see him riding with this on his horse during the battle. The mace is a weapon of authority, of power. If you think about in Parliament, the mace that's put in when Parliament's in session in the chamber, that is just basically a large jewelled mace. And this weapon is, all it is a heavy metal weight with a wooden shaft. It's been around for centuries, but it's a pretty basic principle that this just bludgeons through anything it comes into contact with. It's not hard to use, and this will negate most armour. Things like mail, even with a padded jacket underneath, getting hit with this in the arm or the lower arm would have probably broken your arm. In the head, if you took this to the head, this would easily drop a man very, very quickly. So the most common weapon you would have seen at the Battle of Hastings is this, the spear. You would have seen it on both sides. It's an easy weapon to make, it's an easy weapon to buy, they're not expensive at the time, and it's an incredibly effective weapon as well. This one, obviously reproduction, is, for the time, this is a very short one, but they would have been used by the infantry, by the Norman cavalry. The cavalry would have used them sometimes in a underhand couch lance way. We see that on the tapestry, just for sort of thrusting, stabbing motion. They also are used in an overhand when the cavalry came up to the shield wall, just finding those weak points, stabbing into them, just to weaken the shield wall. So that's another way we see it being used. The Saxons would have used it, obviously against cavalry, because it's got great reach. I can fend off people. In the shield wall, there would have been people at the back, overhand, through the guys at the front, using this to fend off enemy infantry, because nobody wants to walk on towards one of these. This would have gone through mail, through padded jacket, because of the point, and really effective weapon, but very simple, very effective weapon at the time. Okay, one of the most common weapons on the battlefield would have been the axe, and they vary in size and shape, going from this small single hand axe that would have been used with a shield, going up to something more of Scandinavian descent. This is called the bearded axe because of its shape here, and basically you're getting more cutting area for less weight. And this would have been two-handed weapon. In close quarters, this would have been pretty devastating. The shape as well, it can also be used to hook a weapon, pull it in, hook a shield, hook an ankle, and pull someone over. And in the shield wall, this would have been quite a useful weapon. This is the granddaddy of the axes. This is the Dane axe, sometimes called the two-handed axe or the English axe. And this weapon was mainly used by the Saxons, and in particular a group of men called the Huskarls, which basically means house free man, and they were the Saxon king's bodyguards. When Viking kings ruled England, when they eventually left and Saxon kings took over, the Huskarls are an institution that remained after the Viking kings had gone. And they were professional soldiers, they were full-time soldiers, fully paid up, well-equipped and well-trained warriors. They were also used as administrative tasks, such as like tax collecting, and I think in the records we find that 2 of them were murdered tax collecting, so we know that they did do that. On the battlefield though, they would have hefted this. It's a large, thin axe, not designed for cutting wood. This is designed to cut flesh. This is a slicer. This is obviously a reconstruction, which has the middle section cut out, but most of them are flat pieces of metal. They're about 4mm wide, and as you can see in the sort of teardrop shape. We see them on the Bay tapestry being used to pretty much cut down horses. Whether they were used like that, there's been some speculation on whether that actually is how they were used. This weapon needs a lot of space to be used properly. This isn't a shield wall weapon. Some people believe that they were used over the shield wall to hook people in, to pull them in, or just basically to cut into people over the tops of the front shield wall. So how exactly they were used, no one really knows. But if you were unarmoured, this would have been razor sharp, and this would have taken an arm off easily without any difficulty. Really devastating weapon if you were hit with it, and especially if the person that was using it really knew what they were doing. Okay, so the next weapons or groups of weapons we're going to talk about is the bladed weapons. The first one we're going to look at, every Saxon man would have carried. Now this is called a sax, and part of that is from where they get their name from, and it basically is a German word of Germanic origin, and it basically means to cut. Now this one is called a long sax. They would have varied in size. Some of them are very short, almost like we would think that now is like a pocket knife, and they go all the way. This is about as big as they go. This one is a replica of one that was found in Thames in London, and it was found in 1857, 1859, around that time, and it's inscribed, if you can see that, with the runic alphabet along the blade. Now the strange thing about that is that it has the entire alphabet, but the last 3 letters are incorrect, and it also has the owner's name, which is Begnoth, on the end of it, and so we don't really know why he put the alphabet on there, but he did. This one is also in the style, a very English style. This is called a broken back blade. So it's very English style at the time, and in some parts of Germany they did this as well. So as I said, most Anglo-Saxon men would have, or free men would have carried one of these, and it's an everyday weapon. It's an everyday personal defense weapon, but they were used, we think, in the shield wall. So if you imagine people next to me, I'm locked into a shield wall and there's another shield wall coming at me, I can't really draw my sword. It's not really practical if it's very close up. So I can draw my sax, I have my shield here, and I can get in the small gaps in between the shield. So a really useful weapon for that. And it's more of a stabbing weapon. So it does have a blade, it's a single blade weapon, but I think more effectively it would have been used to get in the small gaps in the shield. I can use this in a very small area. I don't need a lot of swinging weapon room like a sword. So they're an effective weapon. So another weapon that would have been used, another bladed weapon, was this. Obviously a weapon that everyone recognises. It's the sword. At this time, they are double-edged. These are more hacking and slashing sort of weapons at the time. We haven't moved on to the fine points yet in time. That's not really happened yet. The Saxon sword to the Norman sword, minimal differences at this time, Western Europe. But this weapon is expensive. They are not cheap. This would have been passed down from father to son, and it is a weapon to show your prowess, your military prowess. Very few people would have carried one. If you see in movies where everyone has chainmail, where everyone has sword, and they're running to battle, that's not the case at this time period at all. And also, this is a backup weapon. We see a lot in films, people swinging their sword around at the start of the fight. No, if you lose your axe, if you lose your spear, then you would go to the sword. This is always a backup weapon. If you find yourself having to use your sword, you're probably in a bit of trouble. So, yeah, but as I said, expensive to make. Single fuller, as you can see, but yeah, more of a hacker and a slasher than not so much as a stabbing point. But yeah, a weapon for the people with money. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in any of this clothing, I'll add a description in the link to the small businesses that make it.